Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I'll be your host for this evening, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. As always, thank you for listening in. Really greatly appreciated. Love it. This episode of the podcast is going to be just a little bit different from the norm, from what we usually do. This being the 8th episode for 2024, I wanted to spice it up a little bit, and I've got a treat for you. Oscar Jonker. This fella's name. You should know it if you're in the world of bonsai. He's the guru. He's the man from Bonsai Empire. Bonsai Empire, you'll definitely know. They've got tons of videos, courses, all that sort of stuff. And I had the pleasure to sit down with Oscar and have a chat about all things bonsai and talk about these online learning platforms and how they fit into the world of bonsai for all of us, whether it's everything we need or whether it's part of what we need, where they can benefit and about consistency of message and all that sort of thing. So I thought it'd be interesting in this day and age that these online platforms are really taking off and really starting to gain hold, that I thought it would be worthwhile talking to a fellow who's sort of been there from the start, really. You know, you'll hear all about it, but it started back in 2000. It's got, you know, I thought it was 1 million visitors a year, but I think it's 1 million visitors a month going through this site. It covers 15 languages. It's just massive. It's mind-blowing when you come to think about it. And I wanted to talk about how it would relate to, say, us, anyone that listens to this podcast, and when you want to take your bonsai to the next level, maybe you're in a remote area or, you know, anything like that. So I thought it would be interesting to chat about it on the podcast anyway. So sit back, get yourself a nice cool beverage, and enjoy the ride. It's definitely interesting. I really enjoyed it. I'd like to welcome a very special guest to the Bonsai Stuff podcast. It's Oscar Jonker. Did I get that right? Oscar Jonker?
You did, yeah.
Perfect. I've been practicing. The owner of Bonsai Empire, all the way over in Amsterdam. Oscar started Bonsai Empire back in 2000. Correct me if I got any of this wrong, but you've got well over 1 million visitors per year, and you cover off over 15 languages.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And why I want to chat with Oscar is because I believe the fundamental drivers that you have generated Bonsai Empire with is something that I call Bonsai Love, which is very big to me. And anyone that listens to the podcast will know about my thoughts on Bonsai Love, where it's connecting like-minded people all across the world through the love of bonsai. And from what I can tell, Bonsai Empire and yourself are very much in the same vein. And Bonsai Empire is a place for community, like-minded community, to get together and share their passion. So I think personally it's a brilliant space. So welcome, Oscar, to the Bonsai Stuff podcast.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
I just want to talk to you a little bit, I suppose, for people who listen to the podcast. And you seem to travel a lot for bonsai when I see you through the social media platforms. How much of the year do you spend away traveling?
Oh gosh, well, not as much as I used to. There's been a change with before and after COVID. So before it was completely hectic, almost monthly, with either European or international travel. But then COVID hit. We didn't travel at all for quite a while, and now it's well, I think it's picking up again, which I'm not sure I'm happy about, but not as much as before. But I mean, it's an international platform, so it is important to show bonsai from, you know, all the different regions. And lately, I'm trying to cover a bit more a few Asian countries that I just haven't promoted or shown as much. So Indonesia is on the agenda for this year, and Vietnam as well, which I'm really looking forward to. I've seen it before, like more on personal travel, but never like on an official bonsai tour, and it's different. So I'm very much looking forward to showing that as well.
You're close to us when you get to Indonesia. Any plans to come to Australia?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, you guys are so far away. I think we're doing this podcast. For me, it's 9 in the morning, and for you, it's what, 9 in the evening,
It's,
or
yeah,
almost.
we've got a bit of a time difference between us. But
Yeah,
if you get to Indonesia, we're only a hop, skip, and a jump away from Indonesia.
that's true. No, I'd love. I've never been to Australia, and it's definitely on the list. I'm very curious about some of the native tree species that you guys
Yeah,
have.
nice. No, that's good. Well, we'll talk more about natives a little bit later on. So, if you had to pick of all the places you've been to around the world, you had a favorite place for bonsai, where would it be and why?
Um, Japan,
Really, it
without.
would be.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. The level and the way they approach bonsai for me is still magic. But
Mhm.
there's a few places that are also as fantastic as Japan, but maybe on a somewhat smaller scale. So with Japan, I can visit Japan for a month and visit nurseries every day and still find like things I haven't seen before. And I mean, the level is still very high. They have their problems with, not having young people interested in bonsai, and so the
Of course.
the future of many nurseries is perhaps not entirely sure. Um, so other places apart from Japan, the Wafong show in Taiwan was one thing that really struck me. I knew it was a great show, but when I visited, the scale and the quality of the trees was something I hadn't imagined. So Taiwan is definitely at top level as well. And like I said, this year Indonesia, that's something I look forward to. The Indonesian bonsai community seems to be divided over three places. So there's a hub around Java, one about Surabaya, and one in Bali. So I'm visiting Surabaya, which I think is the biggest hub for bonsai now. But I'm curious about Bali as well. So I mean, there's so many places to see. But long story short, Japan for me is and will be for a long time number one.
Yeah, it seems to be the heartland for a lot of people. That I was more interested in your thoughts on like the States and Europe's becoming massive now as
Yeah,
well, whether it still had its special place. I know Japan does for me, definitely. But I obviously don't get around the world to see bonsai like you do. But yeah, I think Japan's got something it's quite magical about it, to be
yeah,
honest. And their
yeah,
approach to everything, it's sort of all in sync and all in flow, and it just seems to work really well.
yeah. To me, it sometimes it feels they're still light years ahead in terms of what we do. And what I mean like Europe or the United States, or I haven't been to Australia then, um, and I think another reason is that I just personally really love Japan. I like being there. I like, yeah, so it's not just bonsai. So
Mm,
visiting and it's yeah,
that's awesome. So with your business, let's call it that, Bonsai Empire, you travel a lot and you're away a lot. And I know for me, I'm traveling a lot around the country. I've just got back from New Zealand doing work over there and loving what I'm doing, but it puts me away from my trees, which I miss. I miss them dearly. And
yeah,
I miss the connection and the fact that I get to water them every day and spend time with them. And you know, how do you go with handling that? And also, the more you do bonsai for a business, the more it feels like work. You know, so you go and I find if I go and work on customers' collection for a whole day, the last thing I feel like when I get home after 8, 10 hours is to go out there and prune some of my own trees because it
yeah,
feels
yeah.
like
You're
work.
done wiring now, right?
Yeah. So how do you handle that? And does that feel like that for you?
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. Not as bad as it was like pre-COVID. I was so busy that I think my personal trees suffered a bit, but I do have my own trees. I never show them because like my philosophy with Bonsai Empire since day one has been that it's a platform where others get to share their expertise or their love for bonsai. So I don't want to be the face of the community. Actually, this is one of the first podcasts I ever do because I always felt of like staying behind the camera,
Mm.
which lately doesn't really work anymore because on YouTube I am in front of the camera more and more.
Yep.
Uh, and same thing with my own collection. So I do have my own trees. I don't show them much. Some of them might be on YouTube, but most of the things we do on YouTube is more beginner level, explaining how to grow bonsai from humble origins. Um,
So it
so
sounds like bonsai to you is still very, which it is for me too. It feels like there's very much a personal space there, and
yeah,
it's all
yeah, I
about
think that's
your own
the
connection
thing.
with your trees and having some downtime with them, which is, why most people, I suppose, get into bonsai in the first place is because they need a bit of a break from whatever it is that they do normally as a career, but they, whatever it is, they need a stress relief. And it sounds like
Yeah.
beautifully sounds like that's still current for you too.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's what you started your podcast with, the Bonsai Love. It's still like that. I can still enjoy days of repotting and just being away from the computer and far away from airplanes and
Yep.
uh, all that stuff.
So what
Um,
what what makes you smile about bonsai? Like what do you enjoy about bonsai?
to me, bonsai, there's different aspects of bonsai, right? So I mean, there's the aesthetics of understanding what looks good on a tree, Japanese aesthetic
Mhm.
or whatever. Then there's the part of knowing how to keep a plant healthy, so understanding basic care and stuff like that. And there's the botany, the getting your hands dirty in soil, repotting, digging plants out of the forest. So I think that last aspect is something that I started with mostly like before bonsai. I was into growing plants and herbs as a kid, and then I started bonsai, and I'm still I think repotting is one of the most pleasant things I do. Like I'm not a big fan of wiring. I do of course, but I don't know. Pruning and repotting and these things are stuff I like most.
Yep.
Anyway.
Okay. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I really do love the subscribers to this podcast. It means a lot to the continuity of it, and it means a lot to me to know that I've got the support of a range of people out there that really believe in what this podcast is about. So thank you very much. And if you aren't a subscriber but you're thinking about it, you can jump on board for as little as $3 a month, and like I said, it really does go a long way to supporting the continuity of this podcast for everybody. So please consider, and if you'd like to, and if you've got the means to, then jump on board and become a bonsai lover like the rest of us. Well, so I want to talk about Bonsai Empire now. So in the online bonsai education space, you're a major player. It started back in 2000,
Yeah.
and you started it when you were 15. You started this platform, so you obviously had a vision for where this could go and what it could do and what it could provide to people. So where did that idea come from?
Well, that vision wasn't there in 2000. It was just a hobby. I started a website about what happened to be my hobby at that time. So there was no long-term vision at all. It was just having fun making a website. But pretty soon it started growing. So I think in 2000, so I was 15 indeed. The website was in two languages, so Dutch, my native language, and English. And then it started growing, and yeah, pretty soon I started to understand that there were a lot of people like me who were looking for information and who killed their trees and started, either going to the library back in those days or going online and typing in stuff like, "Oh shit, I got a bonsai tree. What should I do?" Or it's dropping its leaves. Uh, so that's what I focused on because those were the problems that I had myself when I started out. So perhaps I was a year ahead of my audience, um, finally understanding and what to do and what not to do to a tree and how to time it and stuff like that. So I started sharing that information, basic information, and I think even now, what 24 years later, that's still an important part of what we do. We try to help someone who's just starting out to do a little better, to understand it a little more. And um, I think the lowest hanging fruit is in that beginning because uh, beginners, like I was back in the days, they place their bonsai tree on the kitchen table 10 feet
Mm.
away from the window, or like what, 3, 4 meters away from the window. And they water it every day or perhaps even twice a day. I mean, so the watering and placement, those very basic things, if you help them get that right, at least their tree stays alive, and then they can start appreciating it and get into the bonsai.
Mm. So,
Bonsai hobby.
so bonsai is growing in popularity and interest on a daily basis. Like it just seems to be going through the roof because of platforms like yourself and connectivity and social media and all that sort of thing. Are you seeing that sort of growth from across the world?
Um, that's a good question. I do see a lot of growth. So with Bonsai Empire in what 15 languages, I do see how those different language versions are doing. Sometimes growth is just because those websites are doing better and better ranking in Google. So it's hard to say. So right now, the Indonesian website is growing very fast. I don't know if it's the popularity in Indonesia or if it's just my website that's is growing in rankings in Google. Um, but I think during COVID, though, there's been a massive boom in interest. So my statistics, so I think we have about 1 million visits a month on the websites combined, and I think in COVID suddenly it was 60% higher overnight almost. So uh, it was um, it was quite a bit of work to get the website, especially the English website, ready for that massive peak in interest.
Mm.
Uh, and then after COVID, I think it's back to normal again, and back to like the long term growth. So I think the long term growth is growing, um, but it's hard to say for me like internationally how it's doing. I know bonsai is absolutely massive in Indonesia, much more than I thought until like recently. I'm planning now a big tour to Indonesia, so that's why I'm happen to be fascinated with
You've
Indonesia.
so
But it's
with what about around the
massive.
rest of the world? Like, do you see like there's a lot of talk about European bonsai and that sort of thing. I know that Europe banner puts a lot of countries under one umbrella, but do you see any particular uh like spikes around the place of not just your website sort of expanding and growing, but actual interest in bonsai? Like, what would be the epicenter of bonsai interest right now?
And then you mean in Europe or worldwide?
Anywhere that you come across.
Yeah. Well, I mean, historically, it's Japan and China. I think especially China is a bit of a blind spot for the Western bonsai enthusiasts because we just don't see it as much on social media, etc. But China is, I think, China, the bonsai community in China is bigger than the entire Europe, United States, and Japan combined.
Mm.
It's just hard to grasp.
Yeah.
Um, but for Europe, for the last few years, Spain is really on the rise. So most of the European prizes are Spanish trees and or by Spanish collectors and Spanish masters. Italy as well. Well, and what I see happening in Europe and in the United States as well is that we more and more try to incorporate our native species and have our local potters and local stem makers. And so more and more bonsai is becoming a regional thing based on perhaps Japanese origin still and Japanese aesthetic, and some masters steer away quite far from the Japanese aesthetic, and some stay a little closer. But um, I think I heard Michael Hackadorn once say like you need to understand and master Japanese aesthetic before you can know how to
Yeah,
break it.
distance
It's
yourself. Yeah.
like its rules. And I think that's happening a lot now. So in the European shows, more and more of the winning trees are completely European
Mhm.
in terms of pots and trees and stand and well, the entire image,
Yep.
which I think is a good thing. So yeah, I think that's a big trend in bonsai, something that's it's not recent, but I think 20 years ago we still had like mostly imported trees that were winning the shows, and that's not the same anymore.
Not the case anymore. So with your knowledge center, I mean, there's common or what we call universal species, like junipers, for instance. We won't pick on them. We'll just say what they are. But their management and needs and that sort of thing are pretty consistent around the world. So how do you go with species like we talked about natives a little bit earlier and talked about them just then? How do you incorporate local species or native species into your knowledge database? How would you bring in, for instance, like the Australian climate, not only, and it's very, very hard to put a broad brush across the Australian climate because it varies so much. We're such a big country and so
Yeah,
diverse that it changes, from one side to the other, from the bottom to the top. It's a range of different subtropic species, temperate species. We got everything basically.
yeah.
How do you how do you cover off on that?
Well, I don't. I think that's the good part. I think of Bonsai Empire is that it's a platform, so I get to get help from many experts who write articles and help me with content. So I'm mostly responsible for the English version and then mostly the European and United States area. But um, if I see that there's many people searching for, say, a native tree from Australia, there's no way that I can write anything sensible about it. So I would ask someone I know who knows about those tree species to write a guide.
Mhm.
But I think the Bonsai Empire website, more than half of the website is not something that I made myself. It's the community that writes those things. So same, definitely the same for the Australian tree species. No way that I can do that.
Yeah. No, that to say call on
I,
like local experts. That's good.
well, it would be full of stupid mistakes, I'm sure. So
Come on. So I had a look at your earlier in the year. I reviewed your bonsai care app on the podcast and had a look at it. And I just wanted to follow up on that, I suppose. How's the uptake been since you've released? Has it done well for you?
yeah, well, more than that, we were a little bit overwhelmed. So we we took the philosophy like releasing software. You need push push your software out there the moment you feel it's possible, but you're not yet really like proud of the product. So you need to be a little bit ashamed, and then that's usually the good time to launch it. Otherwise, you just keep spending months and months and months of development time to make a perfect app, put it out there, and then suddenly you start learning. So it's better to do it a little bit earlier. Um, so we did that, and we thought like, okay, let's like take it slow, not promote it too much, and put it out there. And then it's been a massive hit, and um, uh, so much feedback from users to like with ideas on how to make it better. So we were a little bit overwhelmed, but the app like it never crashed. Unless, well, maybe the first day or so, it just too much data that was pushing into the database. But it's been stable. It's been doing well. And actually today, so very early March 2024, we're pushing a big new release in a few hours. There's no link with timing this podcast at all. It's just
Come on.
I don't know even when you air it, but I think like today, what we have been releasing updates ever since we launched, but today is the first like big substantial update. And I think now we put something online that we're not ashamed of at all anymore, that we feel it's a pretty complete experience. But it took us a while, and I'm happy with how it went. So it's been popular. It's been good. It's hard to do a bonsai care app, and I always knew it's been a project that's been in the making for I'd say near a decade. We've been close to making an app before, but it wasn't good enough, so we stopped the entire project and I found a new developer, a good buddy of mine by now, and this time I think we managed to make something that's helping the community because it's hard to make an app that gives people advice, right?
Mm.
So if you're in Australia or in the US, and then it matters if you're on which climate zone, or if you're in Europe or near the tropics, there's so many variations, different tree species that need different things, techniques that are all timed very differently. Some things you do every day, sometimes every month, sometimes you have to exclude months for fertilizing. So there's so many things that complicate giving bonsai advice. Um, like if somebody asked me for personal advice, I would ask like, where are you located? What's your tree species? What is the level of development of your tree? What soil is it planted in? What time of year is it? I need to understand your local climate, etc. Right? So the app needs to be able to do at least a few of those things before giving advice.
And that's part of this evolution of the app with the
Yeah,
new release, is it?
yeah, yeah. So the basic advice has been in there. It still isn't perfect. Like we need to make it fine or great, but I think we're getting to a point where for beginners, for sure, the app will give you advice that will help you. For intermediate level as well, and like at advanced level users, I think they don't need this kind of advice anymore. They don't need an app that tells them like, hey, it's time to do this and this right now, or keep a close eye on the buds because we think it might be almost time to rebuild. I mean, it, we could spend a lot of time developing something for that, but I don't think it's worthwhile. I think for that more advanced and also intermediate group, the app can do other stuff, right? So remind you to take photos so that you keep track of your trees, show a progression over the years, because that's what I always forget to do. I don't need an app that tells me when to fertilize, but I do need an app
To tell
that
you to
will
take a
be
photo.
able to keep track. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, long story short, sorry.
So with online learning having exploded, I'm a great believer that the online should be used in conjunction with a hands-on approach. Because I think there's nothing, people learn different ways. Some people the touch and feel and see. Others do it, make a mistake, and then learn from your mistakes. Others are visual, so they can just watch something and then pick it up and take with it. So there's all different types of people that wanting to learn the art of bonsai in one way or another. So having the online, while it's important for me, I think it's got to be used in conjunction with some kind of physical approach. Because I know myself, I'm the type that I like to see it, but then I like to do it, and I like to be then maybe corrected on what I'm doing. So things get. I'm moving. If you can't see me, I'm moving my hands like I'm wiring a branch at the moment, because that's where my memory goes back to with my wiring was, when I first learnt wiring, I did it a certain way without any guidance. But then when I got shown properly how to do it and repeatedly doing that and getting it checked and verified and whatever, that's when things really set in for me. So just seeing it or seeing a picture of it didn't give me the full puzzle, I suppose. And that's what I suppose I want to ask you is, do you see Bonsai Empire and what you do as a piece of the puzzle, or is it the entire puzzle itself?
No, no, absolutely a piece, and then I think even a small piece of the puzzle. Um, yeah, so you need a real life teacher, and depending on how excited you are and how much money you want to spend it, this can be like going to a local bonsai club where you learn the very basics, or perhaps more than basics. Depends on the club, I guess. Um, and at some point, I think you'll need a teacher to at least, exactly like you said, like needs to see you wire and correct you if you do it incorrectly. And this is not something that you would learn completely on an online
No, but it's
platform.
like it's a form of reinforcement, which is where I like this sort of
Yeah,
thing, because I talk about YouTube, and there's a million different ways to do the same thing that you can see, and I believe thoroughly that it's about a consistency of approach. That
yeah,
that when someone starts in a path, it's that chopping and changing of your methodologies and systems and procedures and all that sort of thing that can cause the ultimate downfall with your trees. So
yeah,
that consistent,
yeah.
reliable approach, I think that's where this online learning can be really useful. to reinforce things for people, as long as it's from a consistent source of information. So I know you've got a lot of, very, very important people that have done stuff for you with your courses, and I want to talk more about your courses in a second. But is the approach consistent between the different people that you've used for the
Yeah.
courses?
I think that's the big challenge. Like even teachers that they don't need to agree on things always. Like I did, I have many teachers on the platform, and some courses are even with more than one teacher. So Bjorn and Michael teamed up a few times, or Harry Harrington and Mauro Stemberger and Walter Paul. Very different characters. They don't need to agree. Um, but those points where they might disagree, you need to understand like why do they disagree about this, and how what are their takes, and so understand it, and then you can take away from that whatever you want to learn. But uh, within my platform, it's not that hard because these are all expert teachers. They might not agree entirely about the optimal substrate or which fertilizer. I don't know, like these sort of things that aren't all that important. Um, Things are very different if you go on YouTube, where everybody gets to to say whatever they want, and you see the strangest things happening, and also teachers with you know big channels that say stuff like that. I personally feel like that can't be true. This is wrong information. I'm pretty sure this won't help anyone. And then but yeah, it's free on YouTube. They can say whatever they want, and their fans can like it or not. Um, but once you start paying for stuff, so with the online courses, you need to um, offer a curriculum that gives a learning experience, and that just isn't just chit chat, but leads to
Hmm.
a learning.
Yeah,
Uh,
people have got to get value in what they're paying for, definitely.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
what I think the consistency of approach is really important. So having that range of different educators on there, it might be that do you find that sometimes people try and stick with the same educator throughout the series that they run?
uh, most students that are like interested in the course, they will get most of the course, so they do learn from different teachers. But we do reviews, sorry, surveys after courses always, and then we also try to figure out like if we do more, what topics are you interested in, which teachers would you want to learn from, and then you see like if we do an online course with Bjorn and Michael, usually the students will say like, oh, I love this, give me more with them. Sometimes other teachers get tagged as well, but
Yeah.
uh,
So that was
yeah,
one of the next questions was like obviously there's more course in the future coming for you.
yeah,
You've always got plans for stuff. Is there anything on the horizon, short-term horizon coming up?
yeah. Well, we just launched part three of an intermediate series with Bjorn and Michael. I filmed it when I was in the States, so I visited Bjorn in his garden. That like he's moving away to Kyoto now, but we still recorded that in his old place, and then spent another week at Michael's place to film there. I mean, these are the best weeks of the year for me because it's just really fascinating to work with them, and I consider them close friends as well. So it's nice to spend time with them. But next time with Bjorn, so I hope I'll visit Bjorn. Well, I'll visit Bjorn for sure in Kyoto. I hope we get to film again on new projects as well. That's going to be Kyoto then. So no plans there yet.
Mhm.
There's a course coming up. I can't say like the teacher yet, but this is one of the biggest projects we've been doing for quite a while now with another Japanese master. So we did an online course or twice, two courses now with Masahiko Kimura, and there we are adding one more Japanese teacher that I'm very excited about. But
Hey,
no skills
sounds
yet. So
sounds good. So everyone will have to
yeah.
keep an eye out for that one.
These are fascinating projects, especially the Japanese masters, because it's so different from producing content with like the likes of Bjorn, Michael, Mauro. Um, with a Japanese master, it's everything is different. It's fun. It's great, but it's just very different.
So now I want to gaze into the future as we sort of get close to wrapping up the interview. If you had a crystal ball and you could look into the future, what are some of the key changes that you would predict in bonsai around the world? I'll preface this. So if you go back, let's say we go back 20 years and or more, 20, let's stick with 20, but you look at European bonsai 20 years ago, if someone had said, hey, what's the biggest change that's going to happen in Europe with bonsai? Will I be, competing at the very pointy edge of bonsai? I don't know what the answer would have been really, but that's the sort of thing. Like, do you have any crystal ball?
Yeah, well, I wish I had it, but I think what's happened for the past 20 years is like with internet and YouTube and all these things, like suddenly we see what's happening around the world. So that's a big factor. And I think we're only just getting started with seeing and really understanding the different regional styles in bonsai. I think in Europe and in the US, perhaps Australia, a little bit less, but perhaps you guys do it better. But like we're not that interested in what happens in places other than Japan. So we don't see China, we don't see what happens in Indonesia, Vietnam, and those. I think we can learn a lot still from all these different ways of doing bonsai because it is very different. There's not a big difference between Europe, Japan, and perhaps the United States, but what I see from Australia, I think is quite different already. And then what I see in Indonesia is an entirely different world. So perhaps for the next 20 years, we can get a bit more range in the styles that we try to do and continue the trend with working with local material more and more. At some point, I don't see the point in importing stuff because we just do it ourselves for a long time already anyway. But
yeah, I'm a great believer in using the native stuff. I think the downside fun, with that is it may be a little boring because it's trees that people have around them every day, and they probably don't necessarily want to see them in bonsai form as well. It's every park that they go to.
They do.
So.
They do. I'm sure they do. But no, at least like do a lot of, but also respect the styles that we have those native species in. So it would look stupid if you use your local material and just make a very simple Moyogi style bonsai, right? I mean,
exactly. Yep. No, I'm with you. I hear you on that one. I agree with you 100%.
I think we still have a way to go there. So perhaps we can learn more from all these different cultures in bonsai, see what happens around the world more and more, and then actually do something with it.
So what do you want to do with Bonsai Empire in the next 3 years? What does the future look like for Oscar and Bonsai Empire?
Hope I'll enjoy doing it as much as I have for the last 20 something years.
Yep.
It's you. I mentioned you called it a business a few times, and it is. I might call it a business myself as well, but it's so much more a passion or a passion than a business. So I hope that continues. So as long as I like it as much as I like it right now, and can still think of new projects that I get to spend my time in, then I'm a happy camper.
Yeah, well, thank you, Oscar. It's been lovely to chat with you, mate. I do thank you for what you do for the bonsai community. The consistency of the message that comes out on your platform is very admirable, and it's something that a lot of people can use in conjunction to improve their bonsai journey and really build on their love and their passion that they've got for these little trees in pots. So, thank you, mate. It's been really nice chatting with you.
Wow, Scott, thanks a lot. You make me a humble guy. Thanks for having me on the show. It was really fun talking with you. Sometimes it just feels odd to talk about me or Bonsai Empire. Like I said, I really like being in the background, but sometimes I can imagine people just want to know, like, who's that guy that I see in a Japanese garden on YouTube?
Definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. And if you ever make it to Australia's sunny shores, let's make sure we catch up. It'd be nice.
Absolutely. I'd love to. No, it's gonna happen. Promised.
Awesome. Well, how was that, folks? That was really interesting. Really enjoyed that conversation with Oscar. Got to find out a lot more about him. Usually, like he says, he's on the back end of the camera, so doesn't do a lot of this front end media stuff. So it was really nice and a privilege to get him onto the podcast, and I really hope that he at some stage does get to make it down to Australia to have a look at what we've got and maybe get an appreciation for the diverse range that we have and styles and climate that we have, and the massive area that seems to be underestimated as to how big this beautiful country is that we live in and we grow our bonsai in. So it would be great. So anyway, like I said, I really enjoyed that. I think it was quite a privilege from where I sit to have been able to do that. So no, I really, really loved it. And now I want to just talk about the next podcast that's coming up too, because I've got a nice plan for that one too. Been doing a lot on bonsai work with cedars lately. So lots of emails, lots of messages, whatever. So I want to just talk a little bit about cedars in the next episode of the podcast, what makes them tick from my perspective, how I try to get the best out of them that I possibly can. Also, I want to talk about something called the bonsai conveyor belt, which is an interesting theory that I've got that I'm sure you'll like. So I'll see you in about a week's time with the next podcast. Thanks for sticking around. Thank you to the subscribers. You really do. I know I say it a lot, but you really mean a lot to this podcast and to the lifeblood of it to keep it flowing. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Really do appreciate the support that I get from you guys and girls. So thank you very much. Give your bonsai a big cuddle for me, and until next time, as always, happy bonsai.